There were only three things Adam remembered from that night: the cold bite of broken glass against his skin, the shrill sound of twisting metal, and a pair of eyes staring down at him, terrified, yet calm. A woman's face, half lit by the car's ruined headlights, her hair damp from the rain. She whispered something he couldn't hear. And then, darkness. He woke up in the hospital days later, stitched together and lucky to be alive. The police told him it was a hit and run. They never found the driver who caused the crash. But someone had pulled him out of the wreckage before the ambulance arrived. A witness? A stranger? No one knew. She saved your life, one nurse told him. Then vanished. No name. No number. No mention in the reports. Just a memory, or maybe a dream. He held on to it. Years passed. Adam rebuilt his life. Moved to a new city. Opened a small architecture firm. He stopped looking in crowds, stopped chasing ghosts. But the woman with the rain-soaked hair lived somewhere in the quiet corners of his mind, returning sometimes in sleep, in moments of stillness, in flashes of déjà vu. He never told anyone about her. Not fully. Because how do you explain the way a stranger's face stays with you longer than pain? It was an ordinary Tuesday when he saw her again. He had taken a different route to work, running late, frustrated by traffic. The bookstore wasn't one he usually stopped at, just a whim. A moment of avoidance. He walked in looking for nothing. And then, there she was. Standing by a shelf, flipping through pages, her hair pulled back, wearing glasses now, but he knew. He knew the shape of her face. The line of her jaw. And those eyes, no longer wide with fear, but unmistakable. His breath caught. He didn't speak right away. Just watched. Afraid to shatter something sacred by speaking too soon. Finally, he stepped forward, voice quiet. I know you. She looked up. And in that instant, a flicker of recognition passed through her eyes. Faint. Fleeting. But real. Then came the silence, long, suspended. Like the moment before rain falls again, years after a storm. She remembered everything. That's what Claire said, eventually, not right away, not even as they walked out of the bookstore and into the bright, indifferent afternoon. But when they sat down across from each other, two strangers bound by a single night no one else had ever spoken of, she finally met his gaze and said, Yes. I remember you. I always did. Adam wasn't sure what he had expected. Gratitude? Closure? A sense of triumph, perhaps, some cinematic confirmation that his memory of her hadn't been a dream. But what he felt was something entirely different. He felt exposed. Like the pain he had tucked away for years had suddenly uncurled in his chest. Claire stirred her coffee in silence. And then she told him everything. That she had been 26 at the time. That she had just left a toxic engagement. That she was driving back from her mother's hospital bed when she saw the crash. That she hadn't hesitated, just pulled the car over, stepped into the rain, and yanked open a door engulfed in smoke. That she had waited until the ambulance arrived, watched the EMTs rush him away, soaked and barely breathing, and then, left. I wasn't trying to be dramatic, she said quietly. I was just, hollow. I didn't have anything left to give, not even my name. Adam didn't speak. He was too busy listening, not to her voice, but to the quiet reshaping of a story he had carried so long in his mind. For years, he had imagined her as a passing miracle, faceless, angelic, distant. He had put her on a pedestal built of memory and imagination. And now, here she was, very human. Very real. Very tired. She lived in a small apartment nearby. She worked at an independent press, editing poetry she rarely read aloud. She wasn't married. She had never been. She hadn't told anyone about that night, not because she was ashamed, but because no one had ever asked. "I didn't think I mattered in your story," she said, almost like an apology. Adam laughed, a quiet, disbelieving sound. "You were the only part of it that ever did." They talked for hours. Then days. He saw her again the next week, and the week after that. At first, it was Tuesdays. Then Thursdays. Then Sundays with coffee and books left unread between them. He learned her rhythms, the way she chewed her lip when thinking, how she always stopped walking when she was overwhelmed. She learned his, the way he stared too long at shadows, the way he always sat with his back to the wall. They didn't try to explain what they were to anyone else. Because it wasn't a love story yet. It was something quieter. Something still unfolding. Something made of patience and memory and the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, what had begun in chaos could end in something steady. One night, months later, they walked through a quiet part of the city. Autumn wind brushed golden leaves across the sidewalk. Claire stopped suddenly, looking up at a small street lamp flickering above them. "I used to think that night broke me," she said, almost to herself. "I didn't know it gave me something to return to." Adam looked at her. "You saved my life." She shook her head. "No. I pulled you out of a car. Saving is something that happens over time." He reached for her hand. She let him. They stood in silence as the wind moved through them. No declarations. No confessions. But it was enough. Because sometimes, fate doesn't bring someone back to give you answers. It brings them back to give you a choice. And Adam chose to stay. To know her. To see her. Not as the girl from the wreckage. But as the woman who walked back into his life when neither of them expected it. And stayed long enough to make him believe that healing wasn't just possible. It had already begun. Sometimes, the most powerful rescues don't happen all at once. They happen slowly. In conversations. In coffee cups. In quiet Tuesdays. And in the way two people, long lost to each other, finally find the courage to stop running. And simply sit still. Together.